Welcome in, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here for live weather impact tonight. It is now the Tuesday, June 23rd. Hard to believe we're already flying through June and just around the corner, 4th of July weekend. So we're going to talk about the heat. Typically, this is the time of year we start to see the heat crank up. I don't know if we're ready for this type of heat, but we've got a legitimate long-range heat wave heading our way. But look outside today. This is why you need to get outside and enjoy it, because it is absolutely gorgeous out there right now. This is our Dallas camera, our Mr. Sparky camera network. We've got beautiful conditions out there. The cold front pushed through this morning. That was that little batch of showers. It didn't amount to much. Hopefully you got a little bit of rain, but I'll be honest with you, my house, it was almost nothing. In fact, I looked at my gauge this morning. I think I got like 5/100ths of an inch. It was basically 5/100ths of an inch, so 0.05. It wasn't much, and just enough to know that it rained out there briefly. But then the front moved through, and I'll tell you what, we went from a sauna-like feel to the air this morning to just comfortable conditions. That northwest flow has picked up. All of the storms have exited the region. We have some big-time storms in eastern North Carolina today because the front moved through during peak heating, so it was pretty optimal storm chance for them. Not that I wanted to see severe storms, but boy, it would have been nice to get some of that rain over our way. I know Tim got a ton of rain up in Greensboro yesterday. Alex and I were tracking those, and he'll be talking about those. They had a lot of power outage, a lot of tree damage, power line damage up there. At one point, like 40 or 50,000 people without power. Look at these temperatures, though, right now, behind the front. 60s in the mountains, 70s for the foothills, low 80s, northwest Piedmont, southern Piedmont, mid to upper 80s. But if you really want to know that a front moved through, look at the dew points. We were in that sauna-type area you can wear. Dew points were in the 70s this morning, low 70s. Now they're in the 50s and low 60s. So much more comfortable air mass has moved in. So if you're heading out this evening, you're going to love the feel. If you get in the shade, that northwest breeze feels great. Temperatures falling from the low 80s into the 70s. And overnight tonight, I think we're going to see, I can't wait to see the lows in the mountains this in the morning. We're probably going to see some upper 40s. So areas like Banner Elk, Beech Mountain, Blowing Rock, maybe Boone gets to 48, 49. Grandfather Mountain might even get cooler. But then you see down across the foothills some 50s. So there'll be some outlying areas because of the dryness of the air and the drought that we could see some upper 50s tomorrow morning. So super comfortable. I hope you get out and enjoy it. If you want to get out early tomorrow for a walk or a run, that's the time to do it because it'll be warm in the afternoon, but it'll be one of that dry heat kind of days, you know. If you're in the shade, temperatures won't feel as nearly as hot as they actually are. We can all thank that cold front which pushed through, gives us about another 24 to 36 hours of great weather. Then the ridge of high pressure starts to build. We start to see hot, humid weather, and by Friday, we will see some pop-up showers and storms start to develop. I think that'll be our highest chance of rain, maybe either that day or Sunday, between 30 and 40% in the afternoon. But the rain chances we're talking about here are those, garden variety pop-up afternoon, evening storms. Nothing that's super widespread, just your typical summer pattern. Then we turn our attention to this building heat wave. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but it's really starting to set up shop. The heat dome cranking up over the middle and eastern part of the country. That sinking air, that mountain of air over us that pushes down, causes it to get hotter. It also dries out the atmosphere and squashes vertical development. So that means thunderstorms and clouds just have a tough time forming. We'll get some, but they'll be isolated, and they'll be what we call pulse storms. They'll bubble up and then dissipate. One of the problems in this kind of setup is you don't get a ton of rain, but you do have a bunch of humidity. So the heat and humidity combine to make those feel-like readings get in the danger category, and we're talking heat indices 100 to 105, probably starting Sunday, but likely all next week. And some of the daytime high temperatures could be really, really close to getting to that territory of triple-digit heat, especially the middle and end of next week. So 3-day heat impact. So you could see Friday, we start to see the red return. That's major. So kind of on that borderline, 100-degree heat indices. Saturday, more red. So definitely 100-degree heat indices, maybe 102, 103. Sunday, definitely a lot more red. There's hints that some areas could be a little higher, and that's just really the beginning of what's going to be a pretty hot stretch of weather. So when we start looking at the trend in the high temperatures, the average high this time of year is about 89. Early July, it starts going up to 90. You can see tomorrow, pretty normal, 88 degrees. Even Thursday, Friday, not horrible. Low 90s, that's pretty normal for a summer here. But then the mid 90s. Anytime you hit 95 or higher, now you're talking heat we don't normally see that much of, especially for this length of time. So mid and upper 90s start Saturday, but they could go all the way to the following Saturday. And so this weekend is kind of the beginning of this heat wave, especially Sunday. With the heat and humidity, we will see some pop-up showers and storms, so don't be surprised if we do see some around. Again, the rain chances might be minimal, but some of the storms could be intense in this heating. And there's that heat dome, the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook tells a story. A way above average temperatures likely for most of next week into July 4th weekend. So let's look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. Temperatures do begin that slow climb into the weekend. We climb up into the mid 90s for Saturday, Sunday, but Monday, Tuesday, maybe mid upper 90s start to creep in. And remember, this whole time, humidity's building, so those feel-like readings are starting to get up there around 100 to maybe 105. Also, with that stagnant air mass, high pressure overhead, you're likely going to see the potential for some air quality alerts, ozone. We show you the 10-day forecast. It gets a lot worse, folks. I'd love to tell you there's some breakdown in this, but look at that. Temperatures upper 90s for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That means the air temperature could be approaching triple digits here. Certainly with the air temperature near triple digits and dew points maybe hovering around 70, that's going to put those feel-like readings or the heat indices up around 105. So probably count on the potential for maybe a few days next week where we're going to see heat advisories, could even see excessive heat warnings depending on if we get some of that dew point pooling, we call it, where the dew points kind of get a little bit higher in some areas. So it's definitely going to be that potential for some serious heat going into next week. And if we look at the rain chances this same time frame, not a ton of rain in the forecast. So I would expect drought conditions are probably going to get a lot worse. You see that big stripe of below average rainfall. So it is a bad combo of high heat and lack of rain, which is going to lead to an increase in drought conditions. So coming up after the break, Tim Buckley's back. He's going to join me. We'll talk drought. We'll talk yesterday's storms because he has a lot to talk about there. And obviously we'll talk about this heat wave coming up.
Weather Impact Live with Brad Panovich is sponsored by Moisture Lock. Crawl space, basement, and foundation repair experts serving the Carolinas since 1988.
Tired of all this rain? Does your yard look like a swamp after it rains? Hi, I'm Greg Doggett with Moisture Lock, Charlotte's premier waterproofing and foundation repair company. The longer water sits, the softer soil will become. This can cause foundation issues. If you're having drainage issues, contact Moisture Lock. We'll get the water away from your home and out of your yard.
Moisture Lock. Stabilize, enhance, protect.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Tim Buckley joins me. He's back today. Tim, good to have you back. I thought I'd let you kind of take the lead here a little bit because last night while you were gone, and I know you've been covering it, you guys got slammed with some pretty big storms last night. Kind of a bow echo that moved through and really produced quite a bit of wind damage, a lot of power outages, pretty extensive gusts too. I know PTI had the airport had a gust up 56 or 58 up there. Talk a little bit about the damage and what you guys saw last night.
Yeah, Brad, it was kind of something we haven't had in quite a while, and it's a little hard to quantify. Just hey, tell me when the last time we had this much damage or, these many wind reports. But it's been a long time. We haven't had much of a severe weather season up here. We didn't get much given the drought and everything like that. But you're right. At the airports, at least, we clocked 45 to 55 mile per hour wind gusts. But looking at the radar yesterday, I mean, you could find some velocities a couple thousand feet above the ground that were 70, even screeching around 80 miles per hour.
Wow.
And by the look of some of the damage, it doesn't shock me that there could have been some 60, 70 mile per hour gusts on the ground. I mean, basically, everybody in the path of those storms had power outages. They had downed trees. They had power lines. And so, you name it. It was just kind of one of those things. And one thing that was interesting to me is most of the pictures and the videos that we got, it was all before the rain arrived. And not even just a little bit before the rain, it was mostly like 10 minutes before, a lot of folks were saying. It got really windy, caused the problems, and then it started raining about 5, 10, 15 minutes later. So a gust front, maybe a bow echo or something like that, but really it was kind of one of those situations where on a summer day, if you hear that thunder, you really should head inside immediately. You don't want to wait for it to start raining because that stuff can pick up pretty fast. And sometimes we get desensitized to severe thunderstorm warnings. This was one of those cases where, boy, you really needed to take it seriously because it got pretty nasty in a hurry. And I'm sure y'all were covering it real time just about 24 hours ago.
Yeah, we really heavily focused on it, Tim. And it's funny you say that because I had speculated last night looking at the way the warning polygons were coming out from the Weather Service. They seem to be way ahead of the line, and that's what I thought. I thought, man, these have to be for the gust front. The gust front's probably causing a lot of damage because anytime I see like a whole county issued ahead of the line, you're like, okay, this is the gust front. They were giving people as much heads up as possible. In the summertime, we see that quite a bit, especially when it's really hot and humid and you get cold, dry air coming out. That gust front can mean business. And it's also a good lesson, Tim, I think, for folks who, I mean, everyone thinks they're an amateur meteorologist sometimes and they look at the radar, is don't always track where the bright colors are because that may not be where the worst weather is. Sometimes it is way ahead of those colors. And we saw that with the Indiana State Fair stage collapse. Was that, gosh, it seems like a decade ago now. They weren't prepared for the strong winds that were ahead of the rain. They thought they could evacuate when the darker colors got there. So it really is a good lesson that, yeah, those strong winds can be way ahead of the rain. You can get damage without a drop of rain.
They can. And the frustrating part is that all of these things can happen, but they don't always, and even they don't usually. And so that kind of can give you that false sense of security of like, I tend to know how these things go. Well, yesterday it worked out quite a bit differently. And I do have these storm reports pulled up if we wanted to pull them up on my graphics here. But basically, the worst hit areas were Forsyth, Guilford, Rockingham, and Stokes up here, basically from Winston-Salem to Greensboro to Reidsville. And at one point, Brad, there were like 70,000 power outages, which for our area, I mean, that's number of customers too. So usually you would double or triple that for how many actual people it's impacting. But I know my place, we were out power about like 12 hours, something like that.
Wow.
And even today, there's still about 5,000 folks they're still working because the raw number of outages was over 1,000 across the state. So if you think about it, they've got to dispatch crews to go fix all of these little things. And there's been improvements in technology. They can reroute the energy, which is great. Maybe they don't need to fix every one of those right away. But that's a lot. And it's not like it's a hurricane or an ice storm where you've got the crews on standby rolling in from Indiana or whatever and ready to go. Yeah. No, I mean, we had a weather alert on this back from Saturday, but I didn't expect this much damage. This is not something that you could see a million miles away. And take you guys, for example, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anything really bad happened down in the Charlotte area yesterday or today.
We couldn't buy a drop of rain. It was kind of frustrating. Though I will be honest with you, the guidance did pretty good because we kind of expected mainly north of 40 and 85 up there. That's kind of the corridor. I was like, if there's going to be storms, that's where they're going to be. So they kind of started back in the Hickory, Wilkesboro area, and they kind of accelerated towards you. And we had something weird. I don't know, it was kind of weird. We had a couple isolated showers tried to develop, and they got squashed. We must have had some sinking air down our way because everything was really suppressed. Like even the Q field was not really developed. So we couldn't get it going. But we talked about this, Alex and I, last night. Once that cold pool forms in that cluster of storms, when storms organize like that, they can propagate and go for a while. And boy, they sure did. They made it pretty far east. But as usual, I think they fell apart when they got to Raleigh. So the people in Wake County are like, they can't buy rain either.
Well, I can tell you. So I filled in for Alex on Saturday, and then he filled in for me yesterday, kind of a little teamwork there. And I was driving back from the beach today, and I know Raleigh didn't get the rain yesterday, but when I got there this afternoon, right around noon, they had about the heaviest rainfall I've driven in a couple of years. So they definitely made up for lost time. Some of those storms out there today, they kind of caught me by surprise a little bit. Yeah. They really packed a punch, and down east, I guess they're still getting rid of them. I think there was even a tornado warning earlier at one point in eastern North Carolina.
Yeah, it was really bad timing for them because the cold front came through this morning. We felt it like around 8 or 9. It kind of got to the eastern part of the state, the coastal plain, right during peak heating. So it was like perfect setup for them to get some strong storms. And yeah, really, there's some big gust fronts with some of these storms moving offshore right now and now exiting the Outer Banks as we're speaking. So yeah, those are some pretty good rain and thunderstorms moving off to the east. But Tim, in its wake, I tell you what, I don't know if you've stepped outside recently. This morning it felt like a sauna here, and now we got dew points in the 50s and 60s. It actually feels really good out there. And I was looking at some of the guys. I think we might see some 40s in the mountains tonight. It's going to be very comfortable in parts of our area, maybe the coolest we've seen in a while.
Here's another stat I want to look up, and maybe I can do this later on tonight. How many times this month have we had dew points in like the 40s and 50s? Oh. We're in June in North Carolina. I'm not complaining, but I feel like every time we get it, I say this is going to be the last time for a while, and here we go again, overnight tonight and tomorrow. Widespread 50s for lows at least.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a treat. And in knowing what we both know, we'll talk about this next, what's coming our way, it's probably the best idea is to enjoy this as much as you can right now because we all see this upper air pattern shaping up going into next week. It's it's a classic summer heat wave pattern, Tim. And the difference, we've had one of these back in June. It was like a 2 or 3 day period. But this heat dome that starts to build this weekend, and I think it really is this weekend it builds, it really looks like it locks into place through most of next week and possibly through the 4th. So not only are we talking about a heat wave, but maybe a prolonged heat wave, and by far the hottest that we've all seen this season, and probably for the longest stretch so far as well.
It certainly seems to be really hot. There's going to be heat. There's going to be humidity, all of those things that we've already had. I think my biggest question, and I think the models disagree a little right now, where are we going to be on that ridge? Are we in the middle, or are we kind of on the edge?
Yeah.
And my biggest question, Brad, would be, are we on that northwest flow side where you get the storms that form up in the Midwest and then they kind of roll down here? Those can be ones that can be notorious for wind damage. So I'm not so sure about that, but it kind of makes me, the pattern looks like that we've seen before where we can get into that type of a problem.
Yeah, and what Tim's alluding to is, we jokingly, and it's serious, that we call it the ring of fire, but these storms form on the edges. And especially, Tim, if we're close enough to get the heat and humidity, but close enough to that weakness, you can get some big storms because that heat and humidity, that really hot weather can feed off of those. And those are always fascinating. We call them MCSs or mesoscale convective systems. They form in the Midwest. They get down here in the evening, sometimes in the overnight hours, and boy, you're right, straight line winds and sometimes super heavy rain. That actually probably wouldn't be a bad thing, honestly, if for the drought. but we don't want the wind damage. But if that ridge slides a little farther east, we could get all the fun of the heat and humidity and none of the fun of the storm. So it will be interesting to watch this next week. I'm with you. I'm kind of like, I go back and forth. Maybe should I have a 20% chance or a 50% chance of rain? It's like you're kind of caught in between what kind of pattern we're going to be in.
A lot of times it's kind of what we call a nowcast, where you're honestly looking to see where they pop up a couple states away, and then you're just translating it south and west a little bit, or south and east a little bit. But the heat dome, we see this on the national news a lot. It's really like a pressure cooker, right? We're seeing the earth just get pressed by that extra high pressure, and you're compressing all that air and causing it to heat up a little bit more than usual. So there's nothing strange about it. It's just a way that things work in the summertime. But we're looking at the heat impact, or I guess they call it the heat risk, by the National Weather Service here. It seems like by Sunday and Monday is when it could start to get into that major category across more of our area.
Yeah, and there was kind of an adjustment. I was looking at this earlier, and Sunday at one point they had some pockets of extreme in the Carolinas, which is the first time I've seen that. That's usually like 105 heat indices, and I wouldn't be surprised, Tim, at some point next week we're probably going to get into the heat advisory criteria again, especially if the dew points don't mix out. If we get dew points near 70 and air temperatures, like down our way, we've got a couple days, we're like 98, 99 for like 3 or 4 days in a row, and 70-degree dew points definitely could be pretty toasty around here. I'm hoping it's not going to be that hot, but boy, I'm not looking forward to that stretch of weather.
Yeah, I think the main uncertainties I have with our area coming up by the weekend and early next week is, just how many storms. If you're getting the storms to pop up and temper the heat a little by the afternoon, maybe you can get it a little bit less than it would otherwise be. But it's probably the type of weather where you're 90 by noon, and then everything else is just gravy on top of that. It's going to be a hot couple of days, and it's that air you can wear. We've had a little of that so far this year, but this will be more of it, and probably continues into the first part of July from the way it's looking.
Yeah, when I see the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, that is just like, boy, is that heat dome going to be fun. Like you said, from this outlook, it looks like the heat dome's kind of centered over the Ohio Valley, but that shifts a little further east. Hot, no storms, stays there, maybe a little west. Hot, but also storms. So, yeah, it's supposed to be hot, Tim. Like, I think we go through the same thing. It's like people are like, it's the middle of summer. Well, you see the averages for Charlotte. It's around 90. 90's not crazy. I'm kind of that person where when it gets to 95 and above, that's when it starts becoming kind of an issue. And I think that's the stretch next week that we got to worry about. Not 90 or 91 or even 92. 95 plus for several days in a row. That's really where we run into issues around here.
That's right, and that's what we talked about last week or the week before, was that 90's common, but the 95-plus days are a little bit less common, and that's kind of when you have to start to pay attention and listen to your body quite a bit. It'll be interesting to see with this heat wave over much of the country, Brad, with the World Cup games going on. Wonder what impact that'll play. I'm thinking about maybe Kansas City, I guess, is an outdoor impact. Maybe Philly, maybe New York a little bit, depending on how hot it gets.
Yeah, and speaking of that, yesterday, I know you were watching this. I was watching it closely. I was shocked they didn't delay this game earlier, but this was in Philadelphia yesterday. Our good friend Grant Gilmore, who works up in the Philly area, I was watching some of his tweets coming out, and they had a tornado warning at one point in the first half, like just to the west, and the game is going on. I was like, what are they doing? They got to halftime, and then the bottom fell out, and they actually had a severe thunderstorm warning. And this is the first real game, Tim. We're kind of lucky so far that has been heavily impacted by severe thunderstorms. And I think it was an hour delay. Sean, do you remember how long this delay was? It was like an hour. But, yeah, this was the first real storm impact. But as you alluded to, Tim, I don't think it'll be the last one, especially as we go into July.
Yeah, and I wonder what their planning is. The storm thing is one thing. You just got to wait for that to get out of there. But when it comes to the heat, what do you do? Do you do kind of like they do with marathons sometime? Like, would the TV people allow you to shift the game time to kind of get out of the heat of the day? I don't know. I mean, that's going to be something that'll be interesting to see, because they have that strict criteria like you've talked about with the wet bulb globe temperature. I don't know. That's going to be taxing on the players.
Yeah, I tend to worry less about the players because they're finely tuned athletes, and they have medical staffs and they'll hydrate, and they're doing hydration breaks, which are very controversial. But I think next week they'll be coming in very handy. I worry about the fans. In Europe, what they've been doing, they've stopped selling alcohol, Tim, which I don't know if they could do that because they're trying to promote people drinking water and not dehydrating themselves. That might cause a riot if they do that at one of those games. But that would be interesting to see if they do something like that, or at least provide more free water.
Yeah, I don't know if they could do that with the Scottish fans. I see they're down in Miami now, so we'll see how Miami does after the next couple of days. But it has been really fun to see, all the different cities showcased here a little bit, the different climates going on. The indoor stadiums are fine, but the outdoor ones, we're really in tune with the weather as well. And I don't know, it's just a cool atmosphere to hear the crowds interact with everything going on. And hopefully the storms can stay away to allow for maximum fun.
Yeah, so that will be something to watch, though. The heat will be a big story, and the storms. Something else I want to talk about national news, because, Tim, we covered this last week. I don't know if you remember, but we briefly went to that breaking news of a fire in California. It was basically a week ago. And lo and behold, Tim, I don't know if you know this fire is still burning. It's a structure fire that is still burning. And unfortunately, there seems to be some air quality issues with it. Rachel, our intern, was on it, and there's some kind of cooling center, right, Rachel?
Yeah, it's a cold storage.
Cold
facility,
storage, yes.
So it's like, refrigerated foods and things like that. But the refrigerants are, they think whenever the fire first started, some of it is leaking, but LAFD said that they got most of the ammonia out of the building.
Yeah, so the fire is still burning. It's been causing some air quality issues. And you know how LA weather is, Tim. They've always got inversions. So if you get a big fire like that stuff doesn't really clear out very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what people always think about, or they talk about with the smog in Southern California and all that kind of thing. It's not that they have more pollution than everywhere else in the country. It's just that sometimes their air kind of hangs more for days than it does out east. It doesn't rain as much. It doesn't mix as much. Yeah. And that can be a problem when you have stuff like this that happens.
Yeah, and we should probably mention, too, if we get this ridge next week, that's another thing we might be dealing with is air quality issues, maybe some ozone action days, if we get a stagnant air mass developing. And that just goes with the heat waves as well. You're not mixing up the atmosphere as much. But I did think it was interesting that fire is still smoldering and they haven't got it completely out, which kind of tells you that's a tough fire to deal with. We got about 30 seconds, Tim. Real quick, anything you want to pass along to our listeners and followers tonight before we head out?
I mean, mostly just if your power is still out, hang tight. They're working.
Yeah.
I know that they're still trying to get Forsyth County under control, and hopefully by the end of the tonight, that's what we were told. But no guarantees. So hang in there.
Well, at least it's a little cooler. This didn't happen